when will I see my slides here? Okay, so hello Minsk, how are you doing? How did you survive the BFGS yesterday? Did you mix BFGS with vodka CSS? No? Not anyone? I also think that mixing JS and CSS in one glass is a bad idea. Really. Prove me I'm wrong, but after my talk, actually. I came here from Kyiv, not very far away, and we also have BFGS. We have the community for, I think, a few years, and I don't know how all these guys do it week by week, so I really like how the JS community is friendly and here and there, so that we are doing very good, and just come to our BFGS, we will come to your BFGS, that's awesome. So finally, I see my slides, and I can go with my talk and about testing. Who of you does some testing? Okay, then lower your hands who does only unit testing. Lower your hands if you do only. That's okay. Because I won't talk about the unit testing. I will talk about end-to-end testing and acceptance test-driven development. Okay, so yeah, I'm Mikhail, whatever you prefer, and also I'm an engineer and developer, but also I'm doing some kayaking. This is very nice river in Ukraine, and in this river I have drowned 3 kayaks in the summer, so I know how the pain and failures look like. So success story in kayaking are not that fun, so I'm telling about this one. Yeah, and also I do lots of conference speaking, because if you start building your projects and open source projects, and if you start talking with people about testing, you need to do it very often, very hard, and yeah, the US is not in the map, but still I had some conferences in US. So I do it pretty regularly, and I like it. So as it was said, I really want people to enjoy more how they test, and there are some simple rules. Just don't test everything, test only the things you care about, and make it fun. And especially if you do, I think maybe the most boring stuff in testing, especially for the developers, is end-to-end testing, because we don't deal with our internal code when we do end-to-end testing, because we are testing from the eyes of our users. However, the idea of end-to-end testing is pretty simple, because when we deliver our product to the customer, they do not see our code, how beautiful it is. They see the interface, they try to click buttons, and then they decide if the code working or not only by the interface. So the idea is simple, and we need to show that, the proof that the customer can work with our application. And when we start to thinking about end-to-end testing, we'll have lots of questions. They are all listed here, and probably if we start thinking on all of those, we decide, let's skip it. We will do it later. But the point is, better to start it, answering it in the very beginning of your work. Before developing any component, before developing your application, think on those questions. So first, how can we execute end-to-end testing in web? Sure, we need a browser, but okay, we have few browsers, but we have lots of tools to run them. And especially, we have this problem in JavaScript. It's new JavaScript framework, yeah? Every second, new JavaScript framework comes. And if you do not follow all those NPM packages, you don't know what is the best way to drive the browser today, yeah? Puppeteer, Cypress, Test Cafe. Have you heard of these names? Yeah? Okay, probably there's something new already, and I need to update my slides. So just tracking the ecosystem is a hard question, and how to run browsers and different options we have. Wow, this slide is very complicated, so let's skip it. We'll return back to it, but for now, just forget about it. And how do we interact with the page? So we can open it, do some actions, fill forms, wait for some changes, take some elements from a page. So just what regular user do, except for the fact that user can see the interface and we operate only with text, CSS, HTML. So we are emulating user. It's okay for now before the neural networks are integrated in our developer tools. So what actually we expect from our application? We expect that by performing some scenarios, let's say it would be a checkout process, that user can take some actions on site, and in the end, they will see the message like, hey, your product was ordered and the shipment is about to start, you are done. So we're checking these texts, we're checking for some elements on page, so probably we're still not sure what users are expected to see on the page, but we can have some assumptions about text or elements on it. And for JavaScript, we always have problems that sometimes page is not rendered in time, and we're actually not sure if page is rendered because it's auto-updating constantly. And also there is no good solution on tracking this asynchronity unless you add some tools to manage it. So waiting is a bit of a problem in end-to-end testing right now. So anyway, how we deliver effective tests. And let's go about on the topics. What do I mean by calling tests effective? First of all, our tests should be readable. So unlike unit tests, which you can write and forget about them, they are just working, end-to-end test is something that is very close to specification. So the high-level user should understand about, so your project manager should understand what the test is about, probably your manager should understand what the test is about, because the test is equal to specification. So if specification changed, we need to update the test. And if the developer who develops this test is not in a team after that, anyone in a team should take his code and update this test. So tests should be readable. This is the first rule. If tests are not readable, they are very bad for end-to-end testing. Second is stability. If a test fails on executions or fails on iterations, it's a very bad test. So how will we write the test that will survive the test of time? And the third one is the speed. So speed is not about the code we write, speed is about tools we use. So I will focus more on first and second, and for speed it's up to you. Choose the tools which can improve your speed of execution. So to make tests readable and stable, I will introduce you of the acceptance test-driven development concept. Probably you've heard of it, especially if we drop the letter A from it. Test-driven development, everyone knows, I think. But let's add a layer on top of classical test-driven development. And before we start to write any component or any system, let's start with outer test from the perspective of user, how user will interact with the system. So we start with the failing test, then we develop some initial code, and we see that the code changed, the concept changed, and the test should be updated as well. So this is a pretty good approach to start, especially if you have dedicated QA team, because you can start working together on a feature. So you won't just push them, hey, here is a black box, just test it. Try how it works, and probably you will get it. But now you will be working as a team, and you will deliver the products together. Especially if you do these TDD cycles, that would be very useful to you, because in the if you build even the most perfect code through TDD cycle, you won't be your code won't be merged in master until it passes acceptance TDD cycle. So until those tests become green. So just a disclaimer that when I talk about ATDD, I don't talk about BDD. The common misunderstanding is that BDD is the same as ATDD, and maybe at some point it was so. But BDD, as we know it today, is focused on business processes, on modeling business processes. So BDD now uses when you automate someone's business. So you as a team, you go to some real world business, capitalists, you know them, and they describe you how their business work, and then you try to formalize this and transform to some rules to understand their domain, and you start develop their application. But and BDD helps development testers and the business mans to understand what we are doing and what we are on now. So BDD is about the domain logic. It's abstracted from interface. Good tests in Cucumber, oh, I said tests, I'm wrong. Good features and scenarios in Cucumber, they can be executed both on acceptance level, from user, level of user, and on a level of unit tests, because domain logic should be covered in unit tests as well. So we don't know about interface when we do Cucumber specs, yeah? And unlike ATDD approach, we don't know the interface. When we formalized our step, so then we need implementation, and depending on the level we choose, we need different implementation, and that takes around lots of time. So BDD is quite expensive in terms of injecting it into your process. So if you don't deal with real business, probably you don't need BDD. However, ATDD is quite different, and probably you may use it. It's a good technique. So why would we write end-to-end tests before the code? So first of all, to understand what we are working on. We start with some happy path scenario, how user will work with this application, some unhappy path scenarios, what may go wrong when some elements not filling in, some required fields not filled. So we actually plan how user is interacting with our application. So we design our interface with this. Yep. And when we narrow it down and try to write some code, it will look like this, especially for the checkout process example I mentioned. You can write down the code, and actually it is a test. Yes, so probably you can't execute it at this point, and even if you make it executable, it will fail because the application is not there. But the good idea is that you already have an end-to-end test. And with the evolution of your application, you will still keep it. And because we started with the very simplest approach possible, we'll have a good chance to make the test still keeping it readable and simple. So if we keep the same code and we focus around the feature we initially thought of, and we keep it very tiny, so keeping it simple is keeping it readable. So, and if we're not putting long XPath locators or CSS locators, we're trying to focus on semantic elements. So when we fill elements, we try and locate them by placeholders. We try to locate them, the buttons we locate by their text, and so on. So try to use CSS or XPath as less as possible, because it's easy to change the text than the locators. And also, we are hiding all the details which are not related to our specification, to our interface. We don't know how it is executed, and on this moment, we don't care. And how to keep these tests stable. So if we started with it, it will last for the development cycle, and it will last for maintenance cycle, so it would be reliable. So how to keep it stable to changes? We need to become an oracles and decide what parts of our applications will be stable. Nothing is stable in this world, especially in JavaScript ecosystem. Yeah, we'll probably write our application the next modern framework in a year or two, but still we can have some assumptions about what parts of application will be stable. Maybe menu, maybe some other anchor points. So we should stick our test to these points which we consider to be stable. And as I said previously, probably I will say it again, that use semantic elements, and thanks to cynical Vadim, we know that semantic is very good, and another point to use semantics in your code is that you can improve the quality of your tests. And how to make tests stable to execution? Sure, we need to consider to understand what are interactive elements on page, how to wait for them, and if something happens, just try to retry for a few times failed steps. And yeah, once again, about how do we locate elements on a page, how do we interact with them. And most of tools for end-to-end testing provide us with CSS or XPath, so QA team they love XPath, so we love CSS more. But both shouldn't be considered as a primary option, because better to locate items on their names, labels, placeholders, some semantic elements. So sure, everything can be changed in Sol, okay? Element, CSS can be changed, XPath can be changed, and text on a button can change. So if at one point you change the text search to find, your test will fail, definitely. But even though you will be able to see that, hey, the text changed, yeah, and you will be able to fix the test without even looking into the page HTML. So this is why using this semantic locators is better. So keep your locators short, semantic, and make them flexible on their position. So don't hard-code it into the DOM. So what we get from following the ATDD process? First of all, we focus on our users, how they see our application, how they interact with it, and not on how it is executed in browser. So we start with a very simple scenario with simplest locators, with simplest elements on page, and we improve our code and improve our test. Also, we start to thinking about what is important for our business to use in the application. And in the end, we get an effective test. So, yeah, and we won't deploy our code until the end-to-end tests we wrote are passing. So even the code is working, it doesn't mean that that user can use it. And with end-to-end tests, it's actually, this is. So let me introduce you to another JavaScript framework, yeah, plus one, but which helps to drive application in ATDD manner. So it's end-to-end testing framework, and so it's pretty popular, but I hope it can do better, yeah? So the idea is to write tests in the high-level manner so that non-technical person can understand them, and abstract the way of execution of our text. So this is a test how it looks in CodeceptJS. And if you remember the example from the checkout, it's just actually the same code. We do not put any internal details into this test. We just explain what we are doing on the page. So this is to do MVC application. Its test looks like this, and it's really clear and understandable. It's focused around one feature. Yeah? And yeah, you need nothing more to run it. Just execute this code, and you see that the test is passing. And yeah, pretty sure you can write this test without opening the to-do MVC application, writing a single line of it. So we focus on scenario and not on implementation. This test is easy to read and write, and we separate the actual test from all other tools we are we are using to run this code. So if we maintain a complex end-to-end test, we at one point will definitely use page object as a refactoring pattern. But even if we do this, we can still keep code simple. So yeah, let's move all the steps for login into its own page object, but it will make our test simpler, but still it's very readable, and if something has changed, it's really easy to update. So to improve the readability, you can do even this. This is absolutely valid JavaScript code, and actually, yeah, I don't do it at home, really, but, and this feature was not introduced by me, but I know the use case for such tests. So there was a guy from Brazil, and he was working on the government-based project, and he didn't need the English words. So he decided, oh, okay, I will write my test in Portuguese. Is this possible? I said, right now, no, but technically, maybe. So he actually sent a pull request, and now we have Chinese translation, Polish translation, so people actually use it. So if you don't deal with English team or international teams, maybe it's okay, especially if it improves readability of your tests. So because of this, we're always abstracting for the test how the test was actually executed. In the end, we don't care how it is executed. And CodeceptJS uses this feature because it provides the different tools to run your test. So you want to execute this in different browsers, you definitely need a Selenium. And in JS, we have lots of Selenium drivers. The most popular ones are WebDriver.io and Protractor. You can choose one of those. If you want some fresh and cool tools like Puppeteer, because Puppeteer allows you to drive your tests quicker, especially using the Chrome DevTools protocol, just use Puppeteer. The code will be the same, and same for Nightmare. Nightmare was before the Puppeteer. It's works in the pretty simple manner. So you see, you can easily switch the backends, and you don't care how it's executed. It's very cool. And as you see, again, this complicated slides of different tools you can use to run your tests. And yeah, you just need to install additional packages, and then CodeceptJS will use them to run your tests. So I have a small video, if maybe just to show how the process of development looks like. Because yeah, the talk is cheap, show me the code, right? You see, it's not a regular Mocha, but actually in the backend we use Mocha, but because we are trying to do BDD-like way to write a test, we abstract from all the ideas taken from Mocha, and we're trying to present more BDD interface. So assertions in this case look like C, because users do not assert, they just see something on page or they don't see something on the page. And then we do some interactions, like filling fields. And so the good thing that, as you see, this is a test on GitHub. And GitHub has very nice semantic markup. So we can locate a field by its placeholder, and it's very nice. So some sites maintain semantic markup, so they can be tested efficiently. Some sites not. So try to make a good markup, and it will improve your tests. And this is a nice command pause. Let me show. Because by pausing test at one point, we can actually create the test in ATDD way. We can actually start our test without writing any code in it, just entering into the pause mode. So in the pause mode, we can try different commands and see if they are successful or not. If the command is not successful, like this one, okay, we are ignoring it. And if it works like this one, we just copy it and we put it into the test. Yep. So this is how it works. And you see, if the testing end-to-end test wasn't joyful to you before this, now it's much easier to start. Yeah. So what are trade-offs of using CodeceptJS? Sure, it's another framework, and you need to open its website, read the documentation, try to install, try to play, and still you have some doubts about maybe I'm not choosing the best one, maybe there are other tools on the market. So it's lots of noise in the community and in the ecosystem. So probably you will always be doubtful. Am I doing the right decision? And especially when you hit some issues when you're trying to extend it or using it like you were using Mocha, or because each new framework and have its own pitfalls, and especially if you abstract the way the tests are executing, you need to understand how these abstractions work and how to overcome them if they are, if you have some issues with it. So, yeah. There are no magic out there, so every solution has its issues. And until you stumble upon them, you won't understand them. So anyway, if we focus our tests on readability and stability and speed, we end up writing a good maintainable tests that will last, tests that everyone understands, not just QA team in the separate department, it's a separate country, testing something we don't even care of. No, we get a test that all the team understands and all the team can improve. And everyone can change them, update them, and if we abstract the way of execution of tests, we can easily switch from the tools which were popular in the past, but is not popular today. So for instance, Protractor is very popular tool, but it's not updating for a year. So maybe it's the last days of Protractor. Maybe we should go to something new, and new tools emerging in the market here, really. So ATDD is a good pattern to follow, especially if you deal with, if you can connect with your QA teams, you can introduce this process. And CodeceptJS is a good instrument to help you share the same code base. So thank you, and thank you.
Thank you very much for your talk.
Just remember that we don't have questions.
And you're welcome for a short interview.
Yep. Oh.
So, my question is, we have QA, and QA are paid money for testing. Why should we, front-end developers, write tests? Do we need QA at all if we can automate their work?
This is a good question. Actually, if you try to ask test automation engineers, not just manual QAs, about how do they automate products, so if you just ask how they do it, you will understand that you can simplify their lives and in very dramatically, actually. Because if we introduce better locators, if we think of their works, they will do their work more efficiently. And that's why we like automation programming, because we automate things, and if they are doing some parts of it manually, we can improve their work and do our jobs more efficiently, because we all responsible for delivering a product. And if it needs a QA at all, yes, definitely, because we start with a draft, but QAs can see the negative scenarios, how user will behave differently than we predict, and write such tests in the very beginning, so we could think on these scenarios while implementing them.
So of course, we are all responsible for product we make, yes?
Yeah.
And my co-host also has a question. What can you tell for people who don't believe that testing is useful at all?
And no, so they need to survive several fuck-ups when production is down, the web page are blank, And after a few times of such iterations, they'll understand that they need to invest some money in something other than the development. I'll say, yeah.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.